Good morning. Welcome back. We have a Fox News alert right now. Tensions escalating between Russia and the U.S. An armed Russian fighter jet taunting a U.S. Air Force recon plane. Pentagon officials say the Russians came within 5 feet of the Americans over the Baltic Sea. The incident comes one day after a U.S. fighter jet shot down a Syrian warplane near the ISIS stronghold of Raqqa.
Well, 5 feet is close by anybody's estimation. And what happened here was the American plane, which is an RC-135, which is basically a version of a commercial aircraft that is used to scoop up all of the electronic transmissions that are going on in a particular area. It was 25 miles off the coast of a piece of Russian territory known as Kaliningrad, and the Russian jet, which was armed, came up on one of its wingtips within 5 feet. That's close. And then it went under the American plane and came up on the other wingtip. So that is considered to be unsafe by U.S. officials. Not the first time it's happened. Probably won't be the last.
CNN has reported that Australia has suspended all air operations over Syria in the wake of U.S. forces downing a Syrian jet, and a warning from Russia that U.S.-led coalition planes are now targets for its forces in parts of the country. It's the latest twist in a conflict that one analyst has described as undergoing a dramatic escalation, as an uneasy battlefield coexistence between forces with competing aims proves impossible to maintain. In a statement, the Australian Department of Defence, part of the international coalition fighting ISIS in the country, said, as a precautionary measure, Australian Defence Force strike operations into Syria have temporarily ceased.
Following Russia's warning that it will view U.S. warplanes as targets if they fly west of the Euphrates River, the U.S. military has justified shooting down a Syrian warplane on Sunday as an act of self-defense. The plane was shot down near Raqqa after it bombed targets near U.S. allied forces fighting ISIL on the ground.
Goes back to
the only actions that we have taken against pro-regime forces in Syria, and there have been 2 specific incidents, have been in self-defense, and we've communicated that clearly. The confliction that we've had in place is in our mutual interest because it allows us to address what at least pro-regime forces have indicated is our common enemy, ISIS.
Syria is now a mosaic of shifting battlegrounds which can be split in 4. Syrian rebel forces in pink, the Islamic State group in orange, the Syrian military in blue, and Kurdish forces in purple. With help from the US military, the rebel Syrian Democratic Forces are trying to oust ISIL from Raqqa, which is their last main stronghold in Syria. Russia says it is also fighting ISIL, but in reality its main strategic goal is supporting its ally, the Syrian government.
Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko said he had received strong assurances from U.S. support for his country from Donald Trump during a meeting in the White House on Tuesday. Trump has called in the past for improved U.S. ties with Russia, stoking fears in Ukraine that he might row back from past U.S. pledges of support for Poroshenko's pro-Western administration in Kiev. Moscow seized Ukraine's Crimean Peninsula in 2014 and has backed pro-Russian separatist rebels battling Kiev's forces in eastern Ukraine.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be with President Poroshenko of the Ukraine, a place that we've all been very much involved in, and you've been seeing it, and everybody's been reading about it. And we've had some very, very good discussions. It's going to continue throughout the day, and I think a lot of progress has been made, and it's a great honor to have you, Mr. President. Thank you. Thank you very much. Would you like to say something?
That's a great honor and a great pleasure to be together with you, with President. But I'm most reliable, supporter, and partner, strategic partner. Mr. President, you have a back. How will you respond to the death of Otto Warmbier?
I think Otto is a disgrace what happened to Otto. It's a total disgrace what happened to Otto. That should never, ever be allowed to happen. And frankly, if he were brought home sooner, I think the result would have been a lot different. He should have been brought home that same day. The result would have been a lot different. But what happened to Otto is a disgrace. And I spoke with his family. His family is incredible, what they've gone through. But he should have been brought home a long time ago.
According to experts, on Monday, the death of American college student Otto Warmbier just days after his unexpected release from a North Korean prison is certain to spur President Donald Trump to action. Gordon Chang, a Daily Beast columnist and author of Nuclear Showdown, North Korea Takes on the World, said, "The president is going to have to do something, and it's going to have to go well beyond condolences that he gave yesterday and a condemnation of North Korea." Chang added that the declaration by Arizona Senator John McCain and other Washington lawmakers that Warmbier's death constituted murder by North Korea will likely force Trump to take a stand.
South Korea's Air Force announced on Tuesday that its fighter jets conducted an area exercise with 2 U.S. B-1B strategic bombers.
Our Air Force conducted an exercise with 2 U.S. B-1B bombers. 2 of our F-15Ks took part.
The bombers flew for a few hours over the peninsula before heading back to their home base in Guam. And according to a military official, the training was revealed to warn Pyongyang against future provocations. A military source says the bombers took part in mock bombing practice near the 2 Korea's eastern border before heading back. The deployment came less than a day after it was announced that U.S. college student Otto Warmbier died following his release from North Korean custody. It also follows controversial remarks by South Korean President Moon Jae-in's special advisor on security and foreign affairs, Moon Jung-in, who claimed that if Pyongyang freezes his weapons programs, then Seoul could seek to decrease the deployment of U.S. strategic assets to the country and scale down the allies' combined drills. That view was promptly dismissed by the Blue House, which said it is not an official government stance. The B-1B Lancers, with their 4 F-16 engines and an airborne range of 9,400 kilometers, can reach the Korean peninsula in 2 hours from their base in Guam. They can carry an explosive payload of up to 56 tons.
Our top story, the spokesman for Iran's Islamic Revolution Guards Corps says Sunday's missile attack on Daesh positions in Syria had a strong message.
Our message was first directed at terrorists so they wouldn't dream of carrying out any attack in Iran. It was also a message to regional allies of the terrorist groups, as well as their supporters worldwide and all those who threaten Iran and its territorial integrity. We believe they have received our message.
Ramazan Sharif also said that all those who are fighting terrorism have hailed Iran's operation. The IRGC targeted Daesh hideouts in Syria with several missiles in retaliation for the recent terror attacks in Tehran. The IRGC said a large number of Takfiri terrorists were killed in the attack.
A U.S. warplane has shot down an armed Iranian drone in Syria. U.S. officials have confirmed the strike happened near the Syrian-Iraqi border. This is the second time in less than a month that the U.S. has shot down an Iranian drone.
And it adds yet another layer to an already complicated and dicey situation in light of what happened on Sunday and the ongoing fallout from that. But what we know about the U.S. shooting down this drone, an F-15 shot it down again near U.S.-backed forces in southern Syria. It's the second time that the U.S. has downed an Iranian drone in less than a month, and the 5th time since late May that the U.S. military has bombed pro-Syrian forces in southern Syria. Now, it comes also, of course, in light of the ongoing tension over the U.S.'s downing of that Syrian fighter jet on Sunday and the ongoing fallout, of course, from that and what has become really an increasingly crowded battlefield in Syria with Russia, the U.S., Syria, and Iran all involved in the fight, not only against ISIS, but also in the ongoing civil war, the bloody and brutal civil war. And all this as Syria's government has launched also a new offensive against ISIS today in northern Syria and against rebel forces as well, some backed by the U.S. in the central part of the country, Shannon.
On Monday afternoon, a car rammed a police van along Paris's Champs-Élysées before bursting into flames. A source close to the investigation said on Tuesday that the man responsible for the attack has pledged his allegiance to Islamic State militants. According to the source, the man who died in the attack had given a letter to his brother-in-law declaring his support for the group, which still controls parts of Syria and Iraq. It's the latest in a series of horrifying terror attacks this year against security forces in the French capital.
A van driver has been killed after migrants dragged several huge tree trunks onto a motorway near the French port of Calais. His Polish-registered van burst into flames when it crashed into a truck that had braked suddenly to avoid the roadblock. 9 Eritrean migrants were arrested after French authorities found them hiding in one of the trucks halted by the tree trunks. Many migrants congregate on motorways or along the rail line that goes through the Channel Tunnel. They regularly drag objects onto the road, forcing vehicles to stop. They often slip into the cargo section and hide in trucks bound for Britain.
Japan has passed a controversial anti-terror conspiracy law. The law allows authorities to arrest people they suspect of planning a crime but have not yet carried it out. The law passed the upper house of parliament on June 15th amid criticism from opposition parties after committee-level voting was bypassed. Thousands of people protested against the bill outside the Parliament building. Critics believe the law is overly broad and will lead to widespread surveillance of ordinary citizens and an overall decline in civil liberties. The bill covers 277 different crimes, some that seem to have nothing to do with terrorism, such as picking mushrooms in a conservation forest, according to the BBC. The ruling Liberal Democratic Party says the law is necessary to ensure security for the 2020 Tokyo Olympics.
At least 15 people have been confirmed dead following a bomb attack at a governmental building on Tuesday. Authorities say a car loaded with explosives blew up at the Wadajir district headquarters and destroyed houses nearby. The death toll is expected to rise. Militant group Al-Shabaab claimed responsibility for the attack. This incident follows last week's twin attacks in the capital, which killed 29 people.
The Philippine military has launched a renewed push against ISIL-linked militants holed up in the southern city of Marawi. Aircraft bombed rebel positions and ground troops used automatic guns and artillery against the militants. The military spokesman said the aim was to wrap up the fighting before the weekend Eid al-Fitr festival. The offensive came amid concern that rebel reinforcements could arrive after Eid, which marks the end of the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. The spokesman said the army is closely watching certain groups who might join the fighting after Ramadan. The conflict has now entered its 5th week, and nearly 350 people have been killed, according to the official count.
Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines have begun conducting joint naval patrols. The patrols are intended to combat the movement of ISIS-linked groups between the 3 countries, as well as activities such as kidnapping and piracy. The initiative was partly inspired by the crisis in Marawi and the southern Philippine island of Mindanao. The military there is battling ISIS-linked militants who stormed the city on May 23rd. The patrols have been labeled Trilateral Maritime Patrol Indo-Malfi, according to CNN, a mashup of the names of the 3 participating countries. Military chiefs and defense ministers attended the initiative's launch at a ceremony in the Indonesian province of North Kalimantan on June 19th, according to the Associated Press. Maritime command centers are to be set up in each of the 3 countries, which have also agreed to increase intelligence sharing.
They've survived airstrikes, but are now facing another battle for their lives. A cholera outbreak in Yemen has killed about 1,000 people since the end of April, and it's spreading at an alarming rate. The number of deaths nearly doubled in the first 2 weeks of this month.
Every day we have at least 5,000 to 10,000 newly reported cases throughout the country. That's unprecedented. That requires also an unprecedented, massive response from the authorities here, but also from the international community.
Children are more likely than adults to contract cholera, and more likely to die of it too.
My children have cholera. I took them to hospital yesterday. They gave us pills and some medicine. We didn't get into the hospital at all. It's full and people are queuing.
The charity Save the Children says a child is infected with the disease every 60 seconds in Yemen. Nearly half the suspected cases are children. Cholera spreads through contaminated water and food. But the UN says at least 14.5 million people in Yemen lack clean water and sanitation. And 2 years of war have already put a strain on hospitals, meaning thousands are not being treated for cholera. with seaports blocked and airports shut. Vital aid is not reaching the country, and infections and deaths are likely to surge in the coming weeks.
UN Refugee Agency Special Envoy Angelina Jolie marked World Refugee Day on Tuesday at a Kenyan home, which houses refugee girls who fled unaccompanied or split from their parents while fleeing conflict. The UNHCR said they had fled conflict in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, South Sudan, Somalia, Burundi, and Rwanda. It said almost all had experienced sexual and gender-based violence, and that many had given birth after being raped or were pregnant.
I am visiting Kenya to mark World Refugee Day. It is a day when we at UNHCR ask everyone to stop and consider all the displaced people around the world. 65 million people. The absolute majority living in low or middle income countries, dealing with conflict or crisis or economic challenges of their own. The horror of sexual violence is compounded when it is carried out by someone in uniform who has taken an oath to protect. So it is a responsibility of those who wear a uniform to take the lead now. By correcting from within, setting an example, and stepping forward with new commitments.
The European Court of Human Rights has ruled that Russia's gay propaganda law is discriminatory and encourages homophobia. The Strasbourg court reached the decision that Russian authorities had discriminated against 3 gay rights activists who opposed the gay propaganda law. The 3 judges concluded that the legislation reinforced stigma and prejudice. The European Court of Human Rights rejected Russia's claims that the law protected morality. The 3 activists were found guilty for protesting against the legislation outside a secondary school, a children's library and a government building in St. Petersburg.
Reuters has reported that there is a 90% chance that a tropical storm will develop in the Gulf of Mexico in the next day or 2, threatening oil and natural gas facilities and other energy infrastructure as it advances toward Texas and Louisiana. According to the latest forecast by the U.S. National Hurricane Center, the weather system is expected to hit the U.S. coast as a tropical storm, with maximum sustained winds of 45 miles per hour early on Thursday. Currently located about 300 miles south of Morgan City, Louisiana, it is expected to be near the Louisiana coast late on Wednesday.
On Tuesday, record high temperatures are expected in parts of the U.S. Southwest. The heat wave is also expected to tax power grids, prompt safety warnings, and even make it too hot for some airplanes to fly into the area. According to the National Weather Service, the heat is expected to raise Tuesday's high temperature to a record 120 degrees Fahrenheit in the city of Phoenix, Arizona. American Airlines also announced Tuesday that it had canceled 43 inbound and outbound flights at Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport during peak heat hours after canceling 7 on Monday. The airline went on to add that passengers can rebook their flights or get full refunds.
The European heat wave shows no signs of abating as temperatures continue to soar across the continent. The time may be right for dancing in the street as the heat climbs above 30 degrees, but the summer sun is not for everyone. Some are struggling to cope with the unnaturally high temperatures as they seek refuge from the heat. There have also been a number of reported drownings across the continent as revelers flock to the nearest body of water to cool off. The World Meteorological Organization has said that temperature records are being broken across Europe and that only 2016 saw higher global temperatures.
When we cross a threshold, which is defined by a local condition, then we call for heat wave. For example, Switzerland, the threshold of heat wave is 30 degrees centigrade. So when we cross that threshold, there is an issue of warning or advisory.
For now, the only relief from the sun is the shade, and plenty of water. And with the heat forecast to continue through the rest of the week, everyone might as well sit back and enjoy the sunshine while it lasts.
Lee Jung-min browses the shelves looking for everyday items. But her shopping list is a little unusual. It includes bottled water, but Lee is also looking for another basic necessity: air.
My body is precious to me because we live by breathing. We don't want to take in polluted air. It's natural we want to breathe good air.
Oxygen canisters have risen in popularity recently, with the government set to make bottled air a medicinal quasi-drug in 2018. Auction.com says its online sales of canned oxygen have skyrocketed by more than 500% compared to the previous year. South Korea ranks among the world's worst for air quality, according to monitoring site AirVisual, with air pollution soaring to record levels this year. The situation's so bad that one civic group is taking legal action against the Korean and Chinese governments.
Although the two countries are the ones that need to be working the hardest to fight fine dust pollution, there is no effort. So through this lawsuit, we wanted to bring the attention to the issue to the two countries so that policies can hopefully change for the better.
But while sales of oxygen have increased along with conventional face masks and air purifiers, health experts point out the potential risks.
It must be said that these products have not been verified. Because they have not been certified, we have no idea if there are any problems or harmful substances.
The worst coral bleaching event in history is pretty much over. But it's not all good news. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration said the 3-year event that affected corals in the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans is no longer widespread. Bleaching can happen when ocean temperatures stay too high for too long and corals get stressed. Reefs around the world were severely affected by the back-to-back events. Up to 90% of some reefs in the Maldives were bleached. And corals in the Great Barrier Reef hit a, quote, terminal stage in April as a result of the bleachings. It can take years for corals to recover after a single event like that. If they don't have time to recover, like with this most recent bleaching stint, it's often lethal. NOAA will monitor the sea temperatures to confirm the event is over.
South America plans to meet its energy needs with hundreds of hydroelectric dams across the Amazon River basin, and it's already well on its way. Brazil, for example, gets more than 3/4 of its electricity from hydro. But these dams and their reservoirs are controversial, partly because they may not be as sustainable as they seem. Climate scientists tracking dam construction warn in the long run, dams in South America could disrupt and damage ecosystems, from the Andes to the Atlantic. They found that habitats of unique plant and animal species could be threatened. If enough dams are installed, sediment that enriches the Amazon rainforest could get trapped in the Andes, which may affect local food supplies and even the climate. Dam reservoirs also trap plant matter that eventually decays into methane, which is a more potent greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. Hydropower can pollute more than a coal plant with the same power output. Researchers want more consideration of how dam building sprees can affect local biodiversity and climate. They say the better we understand how dams fit into the natural systems around them, the better we can minimize that impact.